This is the discussion board week 14 solution video by myself, Logan Patterson, and Connor McCleve. So the problem that we are given is that we are developing an application that finds the best flight for people that are traveling. We want to find them the flight that has either the cheapest cost, the fewest layovers, or the shortest flight. This is the data that we are given. We are given a graph, and along each edge there's a weight, which is the cost of the flight. So the first problem that we have is that we have to find the minimum cost from New York to every other city. And if we look at this graph, we set this as our starting point, and then we use, because this is a weighted graph, we're going to use, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, Dijkstra's algorithm. It's just the obvious choice because it has weights. So if we start at New York, and we look at all the neighbors, Boston has a price of $39, Miami has a cost of $99, Atlanta has $79, Chicago is $59, Denver, we cannot reach Denver directly from New York, so I just set that to null. San Francisco is $129, and Los Angeles is also $129. So looking at this, we see that our next closest destination to New York is Boston, so we set that as our second. All the rest of the values for Boston are going to be 39, so we can just set that as the rows all the way down. Miami, the closest distance is still 99 from New York. The same goes for Atlanta. Chicago, we still cannot reach Denver from Boston. San Francisco, the shortest distance is still $129, and the same goes for LA. So if we look at this, our next shortest distance is Chicago. We set the rest of the row values to same, which is $59. Miami, the closest distance is still 99 from New York. Same for Atlanta. Denver, we can now reach Denver, and if we add up 59 plus 69, that gives us 128. San Francisco, the cost is $129, and for LA it remains the same. Next we have Atlanta, which is the next shortest distance with 79. We set the rows to same. Miami is still the shortest distance, or the lowest cost from New York to Miami is still $99. The shortest cost from Denver is $128, and that is still using Chicago as our midpoint, our first destination, our first stop. San Francisco has a value of $129, and same with LA. Nothing has changed there. Our next lowest is going to be Miami. We set the row values to same. Denver is still $128 from Chicago. San Francisco is $129, and Los Angeles is still $129. Next we have Denver by 1. We set the row values to same. San Francisco is $129 still from New York, same with Los Angeles, and then I just chose San Francisco to go off next. So we set it, well, that should be same, but it's $129 from New York, and then Los Angeles has $129 from New York. So this is what our final graph looks like. If we go through the values, Boston was $39 from New York, Miami was $99 from New York, Atlanta was $79 from New York, Chicago was $59, Denver was $128, and that was going through Chicago. San Francisco was $129, and Los Angeles was $129. So our second question was find the fewest number of layovers, and I drew a graph. It's beautiful. So if we set our starting point at New York, we are going to find all the different neighbors of New York first. So we've got Boston with the distance of 1, and the predecessor is New York. The same goes for Miami, for Atlanta, for Chicago, for Los Angeles, and for San Francisco. And then if we look at the neighbors of, I chose Chicago in this case, its neighbors Denver. I mean, it has a bunch of different other neighbors, but we don't have to override them. So you see that Denver has a layover of 2 from Chicago. And that's just what I say right here. All these different cities have direct flights, except for Denver. Denver requires a layover, and in this case, we chose Chicago.
All right, so for question number 3, we're trying to find the shortest distance from New York to other cities. So if you notice, we have all these numbers filled out up here already. So these are all miles from city to city, or airport to airport is more accurately what it actually is. We got these from the Bureau of Transportation. They have a website where you just input the airport and the airport you're going to, and it gives you the miles. And just for reference, for New York, we used JFK Airport. There was a couple options, but JFK is the biggest one, so we just went based off of that. And these are all in miles, so we've got them all here listed out for us already. And down here is Miami. It got a little cut off by our graph, but you can see it's right down there. So from New York to Boston, 184 miles via New York is the shortest distance. From New York to Miami, 1,089 miles is the shortest distance, also via New York. Same with Atlanta is from New York, and it's 760 miles. Chicago is from New York, 733 miles. Denver is null. You can't fly straight to Denver from New York, as we discussed in the last question. San Francisco is 2,579 miles straight from New York, and LA is 2,469 miles straight from New York. Boston, it'll all be the same. There is no, that's the shortest way to go there since it's a direct flight right there. So, and then from Boston to, or from New York to Miami, even using Boston is still shortest to go 1,089 from New York. For Atlanta, it's still shorter. It's to go 760 from New York. Chicago via New York is also still 733. Using Boston, you still can't get to Denver, so it's still null. From San Francisco, it's the same thing, still 2,579 miles from New York. LA is still the same, 2,469 miles from New York. Now, using Chicago, Boston will stay the same, and then Chicago will all be the same going down. And then from Miami, it's still the same, 1,089 via New York. From Atlanta, it's still the same, 760 via New York. From Denver, you can make it to Denver now going to Chicago. And if you add 733 to 888, that's where you get the 1621 via Chicago. San Francisco, 2,579, still from New York. LA is 2,469, still from New York. Atlanta, and so Boston will stay the same, and then Atlanta will now be same all the way down. And then to Miami, it will still be 1,089 via New York. Denver will still be 1621 via Chicago still. San Francisco will be 2,579 via New York. And LA will be 2,469 still from New York as well. So Miami, now Miami is going to be the same all the way down. And Denver will still be 1621 from Chicago. San Francisco will be 2,579 from New York. LA will be 2,469 from New York. And then Denver, we'll make it so that Denver will be the same. And then San Francisco is 2,579 miles. LA is 2,469 miles. And then LA, so it'll make that the same. And then San Francisco is 2,579 miles. So the shortest distance for all of these places is the last number you're given. So we have 184 here, 1,089, 760, 733, 16 and 21, 2,579, and 2,469. So depending on where you're going, if you want to look at the shortest miles, you just have to look at the graph and it can tell you really easily. So, all right, and for question number 4, why do we get different answers? So this is kind of based on the question itself, where the question is, or the title of it is the best flight. Best is a very subjective term, and so this really just depends on different factors from time, money, or distance you can save. So for example, we looked at the amount of layovers you have or time. We've looked at how much the flights cost, and we've looked at the distance traveled. So depending on what your goals are, that's how we can tell what the best flight would be. But a more accurate question would be, what's the shortest distance to flight? What's the cheapest flight? Those kinds of questions. Because when you ask something as ambiguous as best, that's when we get all these different answers, and it's hard to give a concrete answer. But so that is why there are different answers for all these questions. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed our presentation and helped you guys understand. If you have any more questions on these problems or discussion boards, feel free to reach out to either me or Logan and we can answer them for you.